7.
Okay, 7.
Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. It is 7 p.m. Oh. I'm going to call the meeting to order. It's 7 p.m. We're at the Genoa Township Hall. This is the Genoa Township Board of Zoning Appeals, and we have one case on the agenda tonight. And it is January 24th, 2023. The agenda item is VZA case 2023-01, Donald Nichols and Catherine Dixon for an area variance, and this is the first meeting for this application. Staff present is Susan Dortch, Paul Bedson, and Mark Fowler from the Delaware County Prosecutor's Office, and I will call the roll. Ms. Driscoll.
Here.
Ms. Yu.
Here.
Mr. Boone.
Here.
Mr. Hanson.
Here.
And Mr. Phillips and Mr. Carlson are absent. I want to read this into the record, and then we will go to our first item. As is the adopted policy of the Board of Zoning Appeals, all applicants will be granted an opportunity to make their formal presentation. The audience will then be granted an opportunity to comment, followed by questions from the board. This policy was adopted by the Board of Zoning Appeals to provide for the orderly discussion of business scheduled for consideration. The chairperson may limit repetitive debate. First item on the agenda is review and approval of the minutes from the meeting of November 15th, 2022. I'll give you a moment to look over those, and then I will entertain a motion for approval. I didn't see anything to revise.
Well, Mark, I've read them over. I got here early, so I had time, and I would make a motion to approve them.
Okay, Ms. Driscoll makes a motion to approve. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Yu. Any discussion, any revisions? Anyone? Dave? No? Paul? No? Okay, then all in favor signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. All right, and it is 7:03, and we will open the public hearing for the area variance. And I'll read the legal notice into the record. Donald Ray Nichols and Catherine C. Dixon requesting approval of a variance to construct a new single-family residence with an approximately 46 feet, 4-inch tall architectural tower element which exceeds the maximum allowed building height of 35 feet at 4461 Red Bank Road, Galena, Ohio, 43021, currently zoned rural residential, RR, in this is case 2023-01. The legal notice for this hearing was printed and published on January 13th, 2023 in the Delaware Gazette and posted at the Genoa Township Hall on January 4th, 2023. An attempt to mail the notice of this hearing to property owners contiguous to and across the street from the subject property was also made. Into evidence will receive exhibits A, which is the legal notice, B, the sign-in sheet, C, the application, and D, the staff report. And all those wishing to speak on this matter, please stand and raise your right hand. Anyone in the audience, any members of the audience wish to speak regarding the application? Okay. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God? Thank you. Be seated. Okay, and we will start with staff.
Thank you, Mark.
So as noted in the legal notice, the address of this property is 4461 Red Bank Road. And it is a 22-plus acre parcel, and it's located in a rural residential zoning district. According to the Delaware County Auditor's website, the subject property was purchased by Mr. Nichols and Ms. Dixon in February of 2021. There's currently no structures on the property. Prior to receipt of the variance application, staff had a phone conversation with Brett Harper, who is the applicant representing the property owners. And we discussed the maximum building height allowed in the code and the tower feature, and it was determined that they would need a variance to be able to construct the home as they wanted to. The variance request is from section 606.09, and they're asking to have an architectural tower element that is 46 feet 4 inches. Section 606.09 limits the building height to 35 feet. As proposed, the 46.4-inch tower would be 32% taller than allowed per the Genoa Township zoning resolution. Article 16, section 16.01 lists exceptions, modifications, and to the height regulation that are stipulated elsewhere in the zoning resolution. It allows for items such as spires, belfries, cupolas, domes, bulkheads, etc., to extend 4 foot higher than the 35-foot building height limitation. But since the proposed tower extends more than 4 feet above the maximum 35-foot height, this exception does not preclude the need for a variance. And staff requests that if a motion for approval is made, that the motion would contain language that limits the height variance to the proposed tower, and it clearly states that the variance would not apply to the proposed house or any future additions. A copy of the applicant's variance request was provided to police, fire, and maintenance. We had the police and fire department had no comments. The fire marshal stated that the proposed variance request does not violate the Ohio Fire Code. The height of the proposal does not make the structure more difficult to service by the fire department. Copies of the legal notice were mailed to the adjacent property owners on January 9th, and the legal notice was published in the Delaware Gazette January 13th, and we placed a notification sign on the subject property on January 11th. To date, I am not aware of any phone calls or anyone making any inquiries for the application. Do you have any questions?
I don't, but beyond what the fire department gave in their written statement, we're able to service that size structure if necessary. I mean, that's the only thing I can imply from their statement, so I guess it's a little more rhetorical than anything. I don't see on the plans, and that's what I was looking for, anywhere where we have a specific height beyond what's in the staff report. Is it on?
It's on one.
Did I miss it?
We have two
Mr. Harper can probably
A6.0s.
speak to that, but
Right.
he did
Yeah.
provide something that gives the distance above the 35 foot.
Yeah,
All right,
yeah, there's
we'll
two different.
go there in a second.
Yeah,
That's
there were
fine.
two different A6.0s, and one had
Oh,
little
it does?
measurement on
Oh,
the
I didn't
side.
see it up there then. Okay.
Paul has that
The
up
one
on
that's
the
folded
screen
by
for you,
itself,
too.
it's probably that last.
Oh, the last one?
Yeah.
Oh, yep, there it is. Okay.
It's really small.
Boy, I gotta tell you, at my age,
Oh, it's behind us too, on the big screen.
it's 12.4. Okay. Oh, okay, there you go. Sure. Okay. Anyone else have any questions for staff? Paul? No? Dave? Dorothy? No? Okay, let's hear from the applicant, if you would be so kind as to introduce yourself and then present your application.
My name is Brett Harper. I'm the principal at the Materka Group. We're a home builder in Central Ohio,
Okay?
and I'm with,
Yes, my name's David Bullock. I'm with Mellon Bullock Architects, and I'm the designer of this.
Oh, you're the designer, so we have to blame you then.
I'm the one.
so yes, we're here on behalf of our clients, Mr. Nichols and Ms. Dixon. Really, the nature of the request and the nature of the design is predicated on the 22-acre site and the setting that overlooks the Hoover Reservoir. If you're familiar, there's a map behind you. I don't know, you probably have it in front of you too, just sort of giving you context. The house is situated such that the view shed is quite dramatic. And so it was the client's wish to try to find an element that would give them height to be able to see. So there are really 3 observation levels, the top level being a place where they can look out and take advantage of the views. Because it's over 300 feet from the nearest neighbor and it's pretty insulated with the forest, we think it's actually a really neat architectural feature. And so that was really the reasoning for that design and what they were asking us to achieve. And so going through the process with Susan, that is why we're here, to sort of get your opinions and approval, if you see fit, on this design.
Okay. Anything from the designer?
I thought he said it pretty well. The design of this house is really, it's featured around this tower. When I met with the clients the first time, it was their number one wish for the home. And so it seems funny to design a house around an architectural feature, but it really was.
And how large is the house?
When you count basement
Roughly.
first, second,
Above grade.
above grade, let's say 7,000 square feet.
Okay.
That includes space over garage and.
Right. Oh, right, yeah,
Yeah.
living space above
Yeah.
grade is about 7,000.
Yeah.
Okay,
Above grade.
right. And then below grade, you've got a partial basement walkout?
A full basement.
Full
Yeah,
walkout?
So another couple thousand feet.
Okay,
under the
and
grade,
that's
yeah.
gonna be finished, I assume, as
yes.
well?
Yep.
Okay, so
Yep.
you're about 9 to
9 to
10,000
10,000,
feet.
if you want to
Okay.
do all condition space.
High quality, custom home?
As high as it gets.
Oh, okay. Okay. Does anybody have any questions? I really don't, because this is a slightly unusual for us as well, that we don't see applications for a variance around an architectural feature as well.
My first as well.
Is it? Okay, Dave, do you have anything?
I don't.
Okay. Let's hear from the members of the public, and then we'll come back. This gentleman in the back, if you can come to the podium, if there was a microphone there. Hang on one second, and because we're recorded. Oh, here we go. Okay. Introduce your name and address, please.
Yeah,
and
my
then-
name's Rick Wheeland. I live at 9500 Brittonwoods Drive in Galena. And I had a couple questions here. If we could, I don't know if the board knows if we have any other residences in Genoa Township at this height?
I wouldn't know.
That would be something you'd want to check into. I don't know if this is going to set a precedent for something like this when you're going with that type of a height and stuff over top of your zoning stuff.
Typically, it does not. We entertain cases on an individual case-by-case basis. So what is good on one property may not necessarily be good on another one.
Well, I could see that, yeah, okay, well, that just, all right, just to clarify some of that stuff, I'm looking at some of his drawings there, and I just didn't get a chance to take a look at too much of the prints and stuff earlier and stuff to see the numbers on it or whatever, but it looks like he's got a line drawn up there at the top of the chimney that says 35 feet, is that correct? And then you're above that, another what, 11 foot, 4 inches or something?
11,
Yeah.
4 inches.
How big is that building as far as the width of your tower? Do you guys know?
At the point of the 35-foot.
I'm talking about the width of the structure, the inside measurements of the inside structure itself. How big is the tower floor space, is it?
Out, it's 18 by 18, I believe.
So that's a pretty tall pitch up there that you have on top of that roof then.
It matches the roof pitch of the main house.
What's the roof pitch of the main house?
It's a 14-12 pitch. It's for architectural purposes. We're going after a certain aesthetic, and we're going to use a slate roof. You know, we're using really nice materials.
Slate roof, you said?
Yeah, that's a pretty steep roof. What are the ceiling heights on the second floor then? Are they 9-foot ceilings or 10-foot or
Second floor,
on the second floor?
well, it's a shaped space, so it starts out a knee wall of 3.5 feet, and it shapes up
To what ceiling height?
9 or 10, you know, it goes up like this, so it's wherever the collar tie is, and I think we put it at 9, 9.5, something like that. That's really, that doesn't,
And it's a 2-story home, correct? Or what?
from the main house mass.
Right, right, not counting the walkout basement and stuff that you have in the back. Yeah, it just seems like an oversized structure, pretty big. I mean, you could tone it down a little bit as far as I'm concerned, as far as some of the heights on those elevations and stuff for that tower. And it looks like the tower is actually sticking on the back of the house. It's not, you know, in conjunction with the house itself. It's kind of sitting outside in the back of the roof of the house. It's pretty much visible from the reservoir area. That's a little spill-off area down there in the reservoir, but you could reduce a lot of the height and stuff if you address the pitch of that tower. That's a pretty high tower for a 18-foot wide room. You could drop it down to a 612 pitch and probably only be 6-7 feet above ground instead of 11. Right now, they're asking for a lot of stuff as far as elevation-wise. So, and if you're going by case, you know, from what I see, it's in a nice setting, property-wise. You're not really affecting too many neighbors, I don't believe, on something like this. There's really nobody that can probably see it unless it's a family across the other reservoir, you know, when the trees aren't, you know, full of leaves and that type of business and stuff, so. But it is, so my main question was if it sets a precedent for other buildings and stuff, and how many other buildings in our area. I know there's some other structures on the other side of the street from those guys that sit over there in the cove of Hoover's Reservoir and stuff too. I think is it Woodland, or I forget the name of the road that goes back there. It's a dead-end road or whatever. But a lot of those houses back up onto the shore of that reservoir and stuff too. And a lot of them have walkouts and stuff because they're on that back side. I mean, if you look at that walkout elevation, that's probably 60, 70 feet, no, not 70 feet, but 60-some feet of building showing in the back there. So it's a pretty big structure for the area. But if there's no, you know, I'm just saying, as long as the precedent stuff doesn't get set and the next person comes in and says, I want to build somebody, you know, something 45 feet just because this guy did, that type of thing. Otherwise, we need to look at our zoning code and come up with areas where if you have over 5 acres or 22 acres, then it warrants an additional height on your buildings and that type of business. Other than that, I'd like to see, you know, next time, like I said, I'd have to verify that the main height of that structure is 35 feet. As far as his drawings and stuff go, we're just kind of taking their word of honor and that type of business on it. But some things could be done to the plans to address that height of that building for sure. That's all I have for you guys this evening.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. Should we go into discussion then?
Can I ask a question of them?
Do you have, ma'am, were you sworn in? Come on up to the podium, let me swear you in, and if you have a comment, you can make your comment. Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God?
Yes.
And your name and address, please?
Callie Elliott, 9820 Hoover Woods Road.
Okay. Go right ahead.
I'm a neighbor, and I know the property pretty well because I'm friends with the former owner. And what nobody has mentioned that would dwarf the height of this house is the land that goes along the reservoir. I don't know how many feet, 300 feet, I don't know, something like that. That is something you can't build on, you can't do anything. I don't even think you can take a tree down without asking someone. It comes up in such a way that their actual building site, my understanding from having walked it, is it sinks down. If they had a one-level house, they would hardly have any view in the back because of the bump from the land coming up from the water. And so that tower won't look as tall from across the water. It will make the whole building look a little smaller than it really looks like it's going to be. I had no idea it was going to be that big, but I think it's in proportion. It's mainly in woods, so only certain people are going to see it, mainly the ones that live there and walk, or people that walk back in that area. And then you have another huge house across the way that's at the end of Hoover Woods Road. They will be the neighbors, and it looks like they're going to have somewhat comparable houses.
Which way is that? To the east, okay. Directly across the cove to the east. Okay.
Yeah, because I noticed that this house, depending on how it's faced, especially with that mound that's kind of in the back of the house, the bigger house is over here, this house will be here, so they would only see it when they drive up or when they're in that tower and look around. So I think it looks like it'd be a very nice addition to the neighborhood.
Okay. Anything else?
Not that I can think of.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was curious what all this was on the east over here.
So the sheet that you're pointing out,
Yeah,
so
with
this
these-
was something I was just making sure
things.
Susan and I were on the same page with who I was supposed to mail this to. That back section of that Columbus, City of Columbus watershed district, that was what you can't touch, you can't
Right,
do
right.
anything there.
We're,
And so-
we're very
You're very
aware.
aware.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Very
there's been
aware.
stuff further
Yes.
down.
So
But yeah,
that's
what
the-
are these properties then?
Those were just properties that were adjacent that I was required to mail, addresses.
Uh-huh.
It just, yeah, it just looks like a,
So part of their application process, they provide us envelopes with adjacent property owners' addresses on. So this was his exhibit for that, just to make
Correct.
sure that he got all the address,
That he
the
covered
envelopes,
everybody.
address to the people. But
Did-
it's helpful too, it shows you the area.
Did we hear from?
I mean,
Those
that's
are-
what I mean.
Those are all
Yeah.
addresses that have
You
mailing
look-
addresses.
Okay.
Yeah, you can see there's houses.
No, I'm talking
on the-
about this over
there.
here,
Oh,
yeah.
that's on the other side of the.
Exactly.
Um,
Okay.
Did we hear from the owner of, that's kind of in the middle of the horseshoe here?
I did.
Oh, is that you?
I didn't swear in.
Come up to the podium and we have a special swearing in for you, sir.
Okay,
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do, yes.
A name and address?
Jay Seifring, I'm at 5238 Red Bank Road, and I'm actually friends with the Swishers who own the
Oh,
property
you're
in the middle.
friends, you're not the owner.
So I'm not the owner, I want to be clear
Okay,
with that.
Let's clarify.
Yeah, I'm just down the road from it, beautiful property, hike that whole area. Very familiar with the layout and just came out of interest, but I did talk to Mr. Swisher today and ask like, hey, are you supportive, not supportive? As my friend, I'll lean in and support you. He didn't voice any concerns, right? And just looking at the property and the layout of where the tower is, how they're structuring it, it'll be gorgeous. It'll fit in back there with the beautiful big home that's across the cove from it as well. And I don't know how anybody sees it, but somebody who's fishing back in there or hiking the nature trail that's between the two coves, that would be about the only way I think you could even see the property that they've designed. So as someone who lives a mile down the road, I'm in favor.
Okay, thank you.
Where's the nature trail?
Oh,
The nature trail would be directly south across the cove from that home. So if you zoom out a little bit, it's right there, it's the peninsula
Oh, okay.
between. It's just a small little nature area, but then you also have a, like where the trees are, where the clearing and stuff is, that's another community hiking, or a community park or camp area of something, Camp Mary Orton or something like that, I think it's called. But that's the only way you would, I think, even be able to see what they've designed. You wouldn't be able to see it from the road, from what I can tell.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for coming. Okay. Anyone else wish to speak on this application? No? Okey doke. I did have one quick question for the applicant. Okay. You want to, go ahead, go first.
It looks like the entrance to the tower is a spiral staircase, it just winds all the way up.
Just from the top floor to the floor below it. And there's an elevator.
Okay, that was my question, is how safe would it be to get up there?
Yeah, the spiral stair does meet code for this particular stair, but then the elevator will be used almost 100% of the time.
So the elevator is right next to it, right?
The elevator is next to the spiral stair.
I'm trying to visualize it.
Yeah, if you can see behind you,
Okay,
so you see where the little hand is, that's the elevator. So the
okay.
the main staircase of the body of the house, which services the lower level, first floor, second floor, is what you see, the staircase going around the elevator. As it comes to the second floor, then you can take this spiral stair up to the third floor viewing area. Really kind of a special procession as you kind of climb this, but the elevator goes to every single floor.
Okay, good.
My question was, if I'm not mistaken, this property is fairly heavily wooded.
It is completely wooded.
Yeah, and I assume you're gonna have to remove a lot of the trees, or,
As little as possible. So really just in the building envelope.
oh, I see. So the driveway will wind through.
The driveway is there, so.
Oh, it is there.
The driveway has been put in from a temporary drive. The owner did that, I think, right after she purchased it.
Okay,
And then once we have a permit, it would just be the trees that we have to take down.
Yeah.
oh, I see.
So you'd be up in the canopy, really.
Sure. And is it kind of is it an elevated site, or is it fairly level, like, for example, with the
It's slow-
roadway
it's
there?
The site is elevated from the road as you wind back. It's about
Okay.
a 1,000-foot drive, and then as you get towards the house, it actually starts to slope down towards.
Oh, really? Okay. Because I'm trying to visualize, will this tower be visible, like, from the stop there?
It will not be.
Because it's down?
No, yeah.
Okay,
It will not be visible.
okay.
Yeah.
Probably
Not-
won't.
I run a plank up there all the time. You can't see it.
Okay.
The buffer zone will take care of that. The trees.
Oh,
that
the
are there
trees.
are
Yeah, well,
much
and that's-
taller than-
Yeah, okay. Because I'm pretty familiar with that corner, and I just wanted to picture that.
That's a good question.
Okay. I don't have anything else. Paul, do you have anything? No?
No.
Teresa? Okay. Okay. All right, should we go into,
I do have.
go ahead, Jay.
Alternative, if a variance didn't pass, what would be the alternative for this tower?
We would have to discuss that with the owner and see which way she wanted to go. She, it's something she has her heart set on, and, but rules.
I
are
didn't know if there
rules.
was an alt.
We've not
Plan A,
looked
Plan
at
B.
an alternative design yet.
We wouldn't
Figure-
know if we had a
we-
backup plan.
Yeah, we've had fingers crossed, and I did talk to the owner initially about if this really has to come down, and she's like, no. Is what she gave me.
So we would have to take it to her.
Yes.
We're just
But
representing.
I didn't know if he had a conceptual.
No, we
or-
didn't, we did not spend time on that.
Because,
It was
you know,
more-
because the one thing that, oh, go ahead. Oh, yeah, if you guys in the back could kind of keep the noise low. The acoustics
really
in here
carries.
are awful. There are times when people are back in the back talking, and I can hear them better than I can hear these people, so, please. Now I lost my place.
There's no plan B.
No, I charge you extra. No, my question is, boy, I've totally lost it.
It's okay.
No, it's not. Oh, because, that's it, is that the variance is actually by percentage, it is a rather substantial variance at 32%. And that's why I'm trying to really, you know, I
The
mean.
way I would address that is, yes, that would be the case if it was for the whole house. But at the
Okay.
35-foot mark, we're at about 11 feet square, and then it's a pyramid from that and goes up to a point.
Mhm.
So, and the way I look at it is, it's really just gonna feel more like I don't wanna say chimney, but an architectural element that really, you know, just blends in with the neighborhood and the home and embellishments.
Okay.
So it doesn't feel like we're building this really huge thing that's that tall, but it's more of a
You know, and the other thing that's always important to me since I've been on the board is how it impacts the neighborhood, which I know the other side of Hoover is a little atypical. It's not like this is going in one of the subdivisions that they're building over here. And so that's a consideration as well. But it sounds as, and I know there are, in fact, there's some very substantial high-end homes over there on the east side. And I'm trying to kind of get an idea of the potential impact. But if there's little or no visibility from the road, and it really doesn't sound like it has a particular impact.
And no neighbors looking at it.
And there are no neighbors within close proximity either. The nearest neighbor is to the, what is that, the north, 360 feet?
To the north. And you're
And it looks like it's about the same on the other side then, too.
and I know,
Maybe a little farther.
I work, I'm a consulting architect with the city of Upper Arlington and the city of New Albany. They call me in when there's design issues, and I review them. And one of the things that we look at very seriously is height and people that go over it. And
Sure.
So when I look at homes on an individual basis, I say, okay, the purpose of this rule to height is to make sure that you don't have anything that's looming over the neighbors.
Right.
That you are not lowering the property value of the neighbors by any means. So, you know, when we bring this in front of you, you know, we're very serious. We don't think that this will have any impact on anyone.
And, you know, we're not an architectural design committee. That's not what we do. This, I will tell you, I've been on the board, I think, 12 years, and I don't remember ever having an application for height since I've been on the board. And so it's a little atypical, so.
Because when most people think of variance for height, you're thinking about the whole building, you know, and it's such an unusual thing to
Easements,
have these, yeah.
you know, conditional uses, things
Fences.
like that. Fences. Okay, and I do, and you know, you heard staff's comments as far as limiting the variance to this particular amenity for this particular size. Anything else is a whole nother situation.
I would have requested that as well.
Okay.
It should have been in that.
Okay, somebody else, anything? Discussion? Okay, we're gonna go into discussion, just so you know. If we have questions for you guys, we'll ask them. Go ahead and hang out. But otherwise, really, some people think it's a free-for-all, where we're talking and they get to talk, and that's not the way it works. But we're gonna go into discussion. If we have questions for you, we'll let you know. Otherwise, I think we're in discussion. So, discuss.
I asked my question.
Okay. I mean, well, you guys, I think, can kind of see what I'm thinking. Doesn't impact, I don't see that it impacts the neighborhood. I don't see that it impacts the
Neighborhood, yeah.
the neighbors. I don't see that there's any impact from the road. I agree with all of staff's comments as far as limiting it to just this.
And probably it's off subject. My question about the safety of the spiral staircase, but with the elevator there, you know.
I'm a little more concerned about fire safety.
Well, that was part of it. That was my safety.
Well, as far as being able, but I know we've got fire access. I know we've got a large truck, though, the ladder truck. I do know that. at the risk of testifying. So, you know, I think we're, you know, their comments, I kind of wish that the fire department had come tonight and
Right.
at least made a statement, or we could have asked them a couple questions as far as being able to service in case something happened in that tower, would they be able but I have to, so we have to take their comments on face value, and I don't see anything.
Yeah, because we did ask them, they said they had no concerns.
Apparently they aren't, they are not. So, okay.
Is there a sprinkler system?
Not currently planned, no. Can I make a comment on, is that
Sure.
possible?
Absolutely.
So if you were to look, if you could, whoever is running the computer, you're doing a great job, by the way.
Oh,
Go to the elevation that shows the height above the ridge. So the only height that extends above that 35 feet,
Right.
no humans are in that space.
Oh, because
You
that's
understand?
roof line.
That's just the roof line that's actually coming to a point.
Okay.
So from a code standpoint, just visualization standpoint, there are no,
Is it is it a vaulted ceiling, or is it an open attic, or is it?
Currently, it's just flat, but we're considering, you know,
Okay.
shaping that,
So
perhaps.
basically, you're gonna have a shape like this, or you're gonna have? this
possibly.
Or a
Or a
flat.
flat
Or a
ceiling.
flat,
Okay.
Which is, and if
And
it's, if it is flat, it's all
And
below
it's
that
completely
35 feet.
enclosed?
Okay.
There's the roof line.
Oh, yeah, okay. All right, okay. All right. Anybody have anything
So your
else?
ceiling of the tower is pretty much the roof line at the front of the house?
The ceiling, yes. currently.
So your
Yes.
homeowner is really, really just wants the exterior design feature, not really an internal design feature?
Internally,
An
you know,
interior
it's a
design
space, but
feature. Right.
it's designed to
Right.
look architecturally
Okay.
correct along with the rest
I
of the
guess.
house.
Yeah, the interior space is compliant, basically.
Right, it's just the pitch on
It's
the roof that really
It's,
isn't.
it's the
Okay.
element, it's the architectural element.
Right, okay. All right. Sir, podium,
Yeah, Mark, my name is Rick Wheelan, or whatever. I had one other question then, because since that tower is kind of pushed back on the house plan, you know, it'd be kind of nice if they would have done a side elevation from the front yard coming into the house to see, I don't know if you're gonna really see a lot of that tower from the front of the house. and stuff,
Right.
As far as an architectural feature.
that's
See what
part
I'm
of the
saying?
discussion right
Right, so
now,
he's saying
sir.
it's an architectural feature, but it really doesn't present itself as one. If you're walking up to the front of that house, you won't be able to see the point of that
Okay.
tower.
All right.
Because it's so far back in the back. And there are other options as far as, I'm glad you guys brought that up for these guys. to
We
consider
do that as
options.
part of our analysis, and so unless you have any other comments, I think
The
we're,
other comments is, we're building a house right now like that with a tower in it, and we're keeping it under 35 feet, so.
okay.
it can be done.
Okay, moving on. Anybody else, anything? No? Anybody want to go through Duncan versus Middlefield then? I think we're there, and I think we have conditions as well, so when we get to a motion.
Just the one condition, right?
Is it one?
I mean, it's one compound condition.
Yes, okay, there you go.
That's what I mean, that we don't, there's no other item.
Because I think staff's comments are very, very valid, and I think we need to include those. Right. Which is what we've been talking about.
But that would be in the motion.
Right,
not in the Duncan
correct,
versus
not-
Middlefield.
Right, yeah, not the analysis. Okay,
Okay,
I'm gonna do that?
all right. The board reviewed section 307.06 of the zoning resolution reflecting Duncan versus Middlefield as it pertains to the area variance requested from section 606.09 to allow for a portion of a principal building to be 46 feet 4 inches in height in a rural residential zoning district as follows. The property in question would yield a reasonable return, and there can be beneficial use of the property without the variance. The house can still be built, it would just, there need a Plan B for the feature. But this won't prevent a house from being built on the property. The variance is substantial, it is 32%, But to qualify that with, it's an 11 by 11 square, it's not the entire property, but the entire
Right.
building that is going over. So it's 32% for a small portion.
That's true.
Yeah.
For an amenity.
An
really.
amenity, I like that. The essential character of the neighborhood would not be substantially altered, and the adjoining properties would not suffer a substantial detriment as a result of the variance. It's pretty isolated. There are large properties across the way. The property does slope down, so it would not be visible from the road to the west. And it's a large wooded area.
Let me just comment that
Okay.
I think in that area, there is a substantial number of what we would consider over on this side of non-conforming properties. And this is another, but these are high-value custom
Right.
homes on
Yep.
that side. And I think in a conforming way, it conforms to the other non-conforming homes,
Exactly.
if that makes sense.
You got it.
The variance would not adversely affect the delivery of governmental services per their review and comment. The property owner did purchase the property with knowledge of the zoning restriction. The property owner's predicament cannot feasibly be obviated through a method other than the variance. Do we
Sure it
agree?
can.
I would say.
It can, okay.
Yeah, I think it can because they just wouldn't build
It would,
the amenity,
Yeah,
the
just be
feature.
flat.
Or they would change
Or-
to an alternative type method.
and the owner
Okay.
wouldn't be happy, he said.
Well,
Right, I only say that because there really was no Plan B,
Right,
so.
there is no alternative, yeah.
Yeah. The spirit and intent behind the zoning requirement would be observed and substantial justice would be done by granting the variance. Yeah, I don't think I think it makes sense, given the nature of the property and the sloping down, and it reminded me of the observation towers you see at Metro Parks, and I thought that was kind of a lovely use of this property.
okay.
Without an elevator.
So, any other discussion?
No, I don't have anything.
All right,
You
ready
wanna
for a motion?
Make a motion then?
Motion approval. All right, I move to incorporate exhibits A through
I think
D, as well as the board's findings pertaining to the review of section 307.06 of the Genoa Township Resolution into evidence, and to approve the requested variance from section 606.09 of the Genoa Township Zoning Resolution for BZA 2023-01, application received December 20th, 2022, to allow for a portion of the principal building to be 46 feet 4 inches in height on property known as 4461 Red Bank Road, Galena, Ohio, 43021, zoned rural residential. The motion is based on the following findings of fact pursuant to section 307.04 of the Genoa Township zoning resolution, that such variance or modification will not be contrary to the public interest because,
I think it comes back to the conforming, it conforms to
yes,
the properties that are,
that are in the area. It's well screened, I guess.
it is.
Yeah,
No visibility from the street,
right?
no neighbors in close proximity.
Wooded
Really.
lot.
Right, it's wooded, yeah.
That owing to special conditions, a literal enforcement of the zoning resolution will result in an unnecessary hardship because, it would require redesign,
Yeah,
Completely, yeah.
or just constructing that portion with a flat roof, which
which
no one would
be
do
re-
anyway.
It's really a redesign.
It's a
is what it would
redesign,
come
yeah.
down to.
You can't just lop that off. That the approval of such variance or modification thereof is consistent with the spirit of the zoning resolution, and substantial justice shall be done thereby because it will be a proper, it does conform with the other non-conforming.
Right.
It fits in with the enjoyment of,
Because I know just north of there, there's a couple of properties that are absolutely huge and there's a lot of custom, significantly custom homes in that area.
There are.
And it is an appropriate way to enjoy the unique property and unique features of it with that reservoir and then sloping down.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, approval of the subject variance is subject to the owner's agreement to the following conditions. So one is all required permit zoning or otherwise be obtained. That pursuant to section 307.11 of the Genoa Township zoning resolution, the approved variance shall lapse, expire, and be null and void ab initio if required zoning permits are not obtained within 1 year of this motion of approval. Extensions to this variance may be requested pursuant to sections 307.11.a and b of the Genoa Township zoning resolution as may be amended. And the Board of Zoning Appeals does grant the Genoa Township zoning inspector authority to extend this variance at their discretion, subject to the deadlines established within section 307.11.a of the Genoa Township zoning resolution as being amended. And now, that the height variance, the approval is limited to the height variance of the proposed tower and not any other future additions. It's taken from the notes.
Is that what it, yeah. Right.
So
It
that,
applies to only this tower.
yep,
Right.
No other additions, modifications,
Understood.
yeah.
Just for that one
And second,
architectural
Right.
feature.
and there's a second one.
Is there a second one?
there is?
Yeah, about the 4-foot exception doesn't apply,
Okay,
so that'd be number 6.
all right, so number 6 is, the 4-foot exceptions listed in Article 16,
Oh.
Section 16.01 cannot be applied to any additional height to the subject tower.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay,
Second,
I'll second.
I think Paul beat you to it.
yep,
Not everybody at once. Okay.
okay, I'm done talking.
Discussion? Anything else? Anyone? Then I guess we'll call a vote. Mr. Boone?
Yes.
Ms. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mr. Hanson?
yes.
Ms. Yu?
Yes,
Chair votes yes. Motion's carried. Variance is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. And the hearing is adjourned at 7:46 PM. We're going to take about a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back with Mr. Fowler. Let everybody clear out that wants to clear out, and
That whole basement was, they had more money in that basement than with the lake.
We're just neighbors, so just.
Well, we won't hold that against you. They couldn't hear me. All right, we're back. It is 7:52, and we have Mark Fowler from the Delaware County Prosecutor's Office who is going to educate us tonight.
Yeah, well, so thank you for inviting me. And we always tell our township clients that we're willing to come out and talk to the boards because you just don't know what level of experience they have or knowledge. And so we always offer it. And so Susan finally took me up on it, and so I'm happy.
You wanted to come see us anyway.
I did. Actually, I haven't been to see you guys in a long time, if ever. I don't know if I've ever sat in on a Genoa, 12 years.
I'm not sure you have been here.
Yeah, because you've been here a long time, right?
Too long, probably.
So we might overlap. And I don't know if I've ever come to
I'm
BZA.
like, I think I've been 12 years.
So yeah, that's about the same. Yeah. I've been to a lot of zoning commission meetings.
I'm sure you have.
But-
It's a little less contentious down here.
Yeah, it is. So Chair Harmon told me before the meeting that you guys are an experienced board. So I have kind of this boilerplate presentation that I always do, but I'll blow through a lot of that because you guys don't need the rudimentary basics unless you have a question about it, and then you can ask me. So I do have slides, but you can just listen or look at them or, you know, however you want to do it. Just real informal.
It's not much of a view.
Yeah, just real informal. And you guys can stop and ask me questions, and I'll just try to go to the more high-level stuff.
Good.
Unless you want me to talk about anything else. So yeah, zoning basics, right? You guys know you have authority to be here and do this stuff, so let's skip all that. Is it a taking? That's more of a zoning commission thing than you guys. I'm gonna skip all this about why zoning resolutions are important. Okay, this is the BZA specific. And Article 3, as I'm sure you guys have seen in your zoning resolution, is where you get your authority, and it talks about, because the revised code gives a very basic authority to grant variances, but then your zoning resolution fills in some of the blanks. And so this is kind of a combination of either from your zoning resolution or the revised code. So you hear and decide appeals. I don't know how many of those you get, like from decisions of the zoning inspector.
I don't believe we've ever had one as long as I've been on the board.
They're pretty rare. I've done them in a couple of other townships, but they are pretty rare. You authorize variances, that's your bread and butter.
Sure.
Conditional uses, I don't know.
We get them once in a while.
Yeah, and that depends. Every township's different again. Some of the townships allow more conditional uses. They outline more uses that would be conditionally allowed. I didn't even look.
Our biggest one is like living space in an accessory.
Yes.
Ah,
Yeah,
okay.
Mother-in-law suites. things
Right,
like
that's a
that.
common one.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So you'll get those sometimes, and then this one I've never seen anywhere, the revoking of the mineral extraction variances.
I'm not sure we will
See that.
It's mineral rights. The BZA can,
We're not in the Upper Peninsula.
yeah, that's probably why we've never seen them, right? But some counties in Ohio, maybe it's a thing.
Never know.
So I threw it in there.
All people.
Can you go over that a little bit in detail? What does that entail?
So it actually has to do with another part of the revised code that I'm not even all that familiar with. And I couldn't even speak to it because I've not looked at it in so long without probably sounding dumb.
Sounds pretty heavy.
I was gonna say, I can't imagine you would ever see anything, especially in Genoa, like,
Well, first they'd
Yeah.
have to have mineral rights.
Right, and those are,
Then we
yeah.
could talk about revoking them.
Right, and those I know are granted in another chapter of the revised code. And why they gave BZAs, township BZAs, authority to do that, I don't know the history of it. I've never had to look into it.
It also said revoking conditional use permits, so what's the process for that?
Yeah, so That would be if a conditional use that you permitted was violating the terms that you set for the use.
Where it can't, for example, the one I can think of is.
We had one where,
We get,
Well, no, any conditional use that you allow.
we get accessory buildings, which are typically, the last one I can remember we did was down here on Lynetta, where he was building a mother-in-law suite essentially, attached to the house. And I suspect that if they turn that into a B&B, Airbnb, then that would be a violation and that would come back here as that.
Yeah, so, well, the procedure would be, Joe or Susan would call us first and they would do a zoning violation, like you have to start using it the way you were told to use it, or if they don't, then they could come back to the board and say they're not complying, will you revoke the conditional use permit?
Generally, when on those use permits, we make the condition that it cannot be rented, it can't be done for commercial purposes. It's got to be only for the purpose that you've requested.
So, yeah, there's, although I wonder if you guys revoked it, if that would prevent them from still using it that way. You still would have to go to court, I would imagine, to stop them and get an injunction, but.
Susan, how do you know about it? Is some next door neighbor complain about it?
First of all, I don't know that they can tell somebody that they can't do that. But
Well,
I think a better example would be the guy that was running a gym out of his garage probably about a year ago, and we put a restriction on the type of sign he could put, so if he put a larger sign, then we could revoke that conditional use.
yeah, there is debate, a bigger,
Comment on that.
Yeah, don't comment, Mark.
they, I'm trying to think of some conditions, and I know that they have put on conditions before. Usually, we would only know if somebody complained. about
Right.
it.
Right. It's
Yeah.
the old, it's not a violation until we see
Or a
it.
lot of times, we find out things when something's going to be sold.
Yeah.
And then somebody calls and asks, questions, and, then we find out that, this house has, that, sometimes that's how we find out that people have living space in an accessory building. Because the appraiser will call and say, hey, is this something that's allowed in your zoning resolution? And
That's right, because we had a
then we have
variance
to look.
request for one of those
We had one
a
of
couple
those
years
that,
ago.
they had to come in and go
Mhm.
through that process to get it approved.
Yeah.
Because they never had done that, so they could sell the house.
one that I can think of that I've seen is parking. So if you condition their use, they're allowed 2 parking spaces, and then they have 12, and they're blocking the road, and so then sometimes law enforcement will get complaints, and then it'll trickle back to zoning that they're not complying with the conditions of parking. So that's one I can think of, but. All right. Okay, so again, you guys know how you're comprised and who can be on. And the only thing I can speak to this that sometimes gets a little weird is annexed property that's both in a city and the township, which I don't know how much of Genoa has been annexed, but, okay, so if they're not allowed to be, they have to be in the unincorporated area of the township. So just because they're still in Genoa for property tax purposes, they are not permitted to be on the BZA or the zoning commission.
That's probably more of a trustee appointment thing than it is for us anyway.
It is, and that's where we've gotten the questions at our office, like, hey, this person lives here, can I appoint them? And we say, no.
Tell them to move.
Because they really live in Columbus, or.
Yeah, yeah.
So you guys know all this, your responsibility as the chair, the alternates. So here's an interesting question we get sometimes. Say, a hearing starts with 5 members, and then it has to be continued, because it's, I don't know how many of yours go that long, but.
Every once in a while.
Okay.
We had one make it to
Teresa
3.
says, yeah. Okay,
exciting.
so say Teresa is gonna miss the next one, maybe even the next 2. So then the question is, we only have 4 members, can the alternate come in? And we're a little bit leery of that sometimes. We say it depends. We always want the applicant to decide, because then they can't complain. They can't
Right.
use that as a reason to, if they appeal your decision, to make hay, right? So we say, do you want a 4-member board, or do you want us to put the alternate in? If the alternate was sitting in the audience, then there's really no problem. Or he wasn't here, but he'll read up on the notes and we can catch him up. Get it in writing, they say, okay, then there's no issue.
I can remember one of the first meetings I sat in, as an alternate. There was only 3 of us here. The chairman, 1 other member, and me as an alternate. And we made them say it was okay to proceed. We made the applicant affirm that we could proceed.
Yeah, that's because then they can't, if it's on the record,
Right, 'cause
they
and
could.
we had to be 3-0
Yeah.
for anything to get.
Right, and most don't want, if they're represented by an attorney anyway, they realize they don't want 4 because a 2-2 is a no. It has to be affirmatively granted by at least 3.
We've had 4 from time to time, but not in quite a while.
Yeah,
It's been quite a while since,
Yeah.
God, not in recent memory. We were going through a period of time when I came on the board where attendance was kind of an issue.
I think I've only been here once, where we had.
Yeah, it's been a long
Yeah.
time.
I mean, if you have 4,
I mean, we really do have, their attendance rate is awesome, and we don't really have any
that's good.
issues.
Yeah, that's good, because I mean, the business must march on, right? So if you just can only muster 4, they can't wait 6
Right,
months
and
for
then
new.
4 is what 4 is,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, so, but I think most of them would like to have 5, because then they got more, the odds are better to get 3 votes.
And we've had that, I think, like sometimes, and since we do record everything and we do have audio, I think we've asked, and then the person that was coming back in has testified that they did review the
Oh, right, you did that
information
one time.
beforehand.
Yeah.
So I thought that worked out well too, and we may have got that advice from the
Yeah,
office.
that time I was wishing I would.
Probably.
That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah, sorry.
I came in as an alternate, I was wishing, I read all the documents, and I'm like, do I want to sit in on this?
Sorry for your luck. They are what they are.
Busy that night after all.
Yeah. I got
Alright.
a thing.
So your terms are already set, they expire in a staggered, so that not everyone leaves at the same time, you keep experience. Your budget is determined by the trustees. You may employ professionals, surveyors, architects, if you need advice of an architect. You can hire any professional that you feel you need to make a decision. And it comes out of your budget.
Never seen that.
And I haven't either. Again, at quorum, you have to have 3 to
We
meet.
talked, yeah.
Yeah, you have to have 3 to make a decision. You can't have a meeting if you don't have at least 3. So here's an interesting thing that, say you only had 3 members and one of them realizes in the middle of the meeting they have a conflict of interest. You can, there's case law that says that you can, if there's at least 3 members for quorum, if it passes, say, 2-0, that can potentially be a passage.
Really?
Although it's not in the BZA context, so I don't know if that would hold up as well. It's more of like, there's been trustee decisions that were upheld 1-0 with 1 or 2 abstentions.
But that's a board of 3, though. I think
That
there's
is.
a difference between a board of 3 and a board of 5.
Yeah, although 2 out of 5 would be about the same ratio.
Can you have, let's say you have one hearing that you have 5 members.
Mhm.
It goes to a continuance, you have 3 the next time. Can the person request another continuance to have 5 because now the odds are against them?
I'd say I would grant that if I was, yeah,
And there have been a few times, not lately, where in a couple of circumstances, we've asked the applicant if they want a continuance, and I'm more than happy to entertain it, because I'd rather give them the benefit of the doubt
yeah.
than to say, no, I'm gonna hold your feet to the fire and we're gonna
Yeah.
finish this thing.
Yeah, because
I don't think that turns out well.
No, yeah, if they don't get, well, anybody can appeal, right? So anybody could claim that they were prejudiced by the absence of the 2 other members,
Sure.
so.
And, I think we've had very few over the years, I can think of one quite a while ago. But we've had very few appeals because we try, I mean, because we all show up and we try to
Yeah.
make it.
I remember an appeal, it was at the fence.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
Over on Sunbury Road.
Yeah.
I was just by there today and they were putting some damn thing up there.
Really?
Yep, I'm like, oh, God, not
Yeah.
that one again.
Yeah, he hired some big shot firm and I beat him.
Yeah, yeah.
You guys beat him.
Huh?
You guys beat him. I just told them why you guys did the right thing.
Yeah.
No, that was an interesting case. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the meetings. You may compel the appearance of witnesses. Minutes are required. They're kept really well here. That's not an issue. They're a public record. You guys know that. And then there's verbatim transcripts, which you guys take recordings, and then if it is appealed, that's given to a court reporter to
Which, from my
transcribe.
understanding, is that both the written and the video are considered in total
Yes,
the record.
yes. So yeah, that's not an issue. Some townships are less sophisticated and your record, you, as the attorney, I worry about the record being produced to the court.
Sure.
If it's appealed. All right, that's not an issue here. Okay, so your decisions, okay, so this is an appeal. If you ever get an appeal of Joe Schaefer's decisions, you have three options. You can reverse and basically undo what he said, and then the opposite becomes the decision of the township. You can affirm, or you can modify his decision. So you can really, you oversee Joe's decisions, and you can take any of those actions on any decision he makes. And that's really any administrative decision. So if he says, if he sends a letter that someone's grass is, or that someone has an inoperable vehicle, and they come in, they can say, well, it's not inoperable, and have a whole hearing, and you guys can decide if it's inoperable or not. It's the first thing that came to
Wish I
mind.
could tell you, I didn't have one around the corner from me.
But those are very rare, as you guys have expressed. Okay, so who may appeal to the BZA? Oh, I have 2805, sorry, that's from another presentation I did. It's not under 2805 here. But this is the law. Any person aggrieved by the township officer, so, and it's the same thing in an application for a variance. Obviously, the applicant, or the person who Joe is making a decision on, is an aggrieved person, has jurisdiction, or has standing, rather. But so could a neighbor say, who, let's say that neighbor who didn't
Yeah.
mind the tower, did mind the tower, and felt like it was gonna decrease his property value. He could appeal the decision. He would have standing. But not just anybody can do that.
Right.
So if someone's 18 miles away on the other end of the township,
The guy living over on Worthington Road. no.
right. So while we're talking about that, I think it's good that you guys let anybody talk. Anybody who comes and wants to talk. I think that's the right approach. I think all of our counties, townships do that because that's our advice, but some counties we've learned say, no, there's no public comment in BZA. I think that's a little dangerous because you don't really know who has standing. That's almost like you guys trying to decide on the spot right here, do they have standing or do they not?
Make that decision, and frankly,
No.
we don't get enough turnout
Right,
to really merit
right,
just shutting it down.
right.
And I don't know, it doesn't, good, bad, or indifferent, it
Right.
doesn't bother me. So I probably give them a little more leeway than maybe others think I should, but I'd rather do that. I would rather be that guy than be the guy that says, no public comment.
But shouldn't, the board should be mindful of that.
That's what I was just gonna
because-
say.
Oh, go ahead.
No,
then.
no, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
You'll say it much better, go ahead.
Maybe. So yeah, this is how I think you handle that. You take it for what it's worth. You give it its due weight.
Right.
If they're 18 miles away and have no standing to complain about how this will look in the neighborhood, then and you can even put that on the record.
And we do
yeah.
get that.
Okay, yeah.
We do get that. We've
Yeah.
had a couple of situations where we've had people come in and they live miles away. And
Mhm.
it's, and the guy that lives next door likes the tower. The guy that lives 4 miles away doesn't like the tower.
Yeah.
Well, of course, this guy over here, I'm going to give him much more credibility than.
Absolutely, that's what you do. Yep, you give it the weight it's due. And almost, from the guy who would maybe have to argue in court, I'd almost say, if you were going to coincidentally find for the person who didn't like it but lived far away, I would almost say, we didn't take that person's testimony into account, that's not why we're doing this. Hopefully you would, produce the full Duncan record and make it,
Right.
it's not just because if I'm the attorney for a spurned applicant, I would say, well, they let somebody with no standing get up and influence them, and that's why they made this decision.
Sure, of course. That's actually
Yeah.
probably their best argument.
It could be, yeah, so, but that's why you make a full record of all the legitimate reasons why you would do something, so. But it's just an interesting thought exercise, some counties don't do it, I agree with your approach.
Thank you.
If they don't allow it, why would it be open to the public? If people were sitting in the audience,
Yeah, so there is
this
a.
is kind of like open up a can of worms.
There's a long-standing maxim in government law that the public has a right to observe but not to speak.
Sort of like the court system.
Right. And this is a quasi-judicial proceeding.
Right.
So that's why some people are like, no, never have public comment in a meeting, in a BZA meeting. But again, I think you jeopardize letting someone with standing not speak.
I agree.
Because not just the applicant has standing.
You opened it up to an appeal too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. A neighbor, again, can be an aggrieved person, can have standing to bring an appeal, and they get up and say, they never even let me talk. I think that the court's not gonna look very favorably on that alone. So yeah, why give anybody reason to go to court? If you can close off all avenues to an appeal, then that's better. So an appeal, and again, this is in the context of an appeal of Joe's decision. An appeal must be taken within 20 days after the decision. So after 20 days, no one can appeal Joe's decision to you. And you hold a hearing, just like you did tonight on those. Give notice, 10 days to interested parties, put it in the newspaper.
What's a newspaper?
Yeah, I know.
I
That's a
read
whole
that.
nother.
I have to read that now because it's like,
Yeah.
who would have seen it?
Honestly, I think it's public notices that keep the newspapers going, some of them anyway, like the Delaware Gazette.
The last time I saw the Delaware Gazette, that was it, and it's been
Yeah.
quite a while.
We have to advertise for firms in newspapers. Certain contracts have to be advertised in the
Yeah,
newspaper.
probably.
It's expensive too, I mean, yeah, because they know that's where their bread is buttered, so you have to do it in the newspaper of general
21
circulation.
days, it has to be, has
Wow.
been 3 times in 21 days.
The thing
Yeah.
is though, you're opening the newspaper up to the public. And your public is, more and more of them are on social media. So
Right.
that audience is,
Wait, that's not the
It's
only place
going
they
by the-
advertise
it's going by the
for bids,
wayside,
but
you know?
it's still in the code that you're required to run it in a newspaper.
There was a big push, I don't know, like 8 or 9 years ago, no longer putting it in the print newspaper and just creating a website where you can go. And the newspaper lobby fought back really hard because it is keeping the newspapers alive. And so the General Assembly's compromise is it goes both, but you still have to put it in the print newspaper, so.
Yeah, so how did that help? Didn't it?
Yeah, right. So they still get their money for the public notice, which, okay, so your decisions should be issued within a reasonable time. You actually don't have to make the decision the night of the hearing. I think it's good practice, you're already here. You'd have to get back together to make your decision, but you don't have to do it that night.
We normally do.
Yeah, I think it's a good
Almost
practice.
always. I can think of a couple cases that we,
Yeah.
that we took to the next meeting, but
if you do reconvene, can it be at the next meeting or does it have to be at a separate?
I'd say, how far is it? Because it has to be a reasonable time.
Reasonable.
What's reasonable?
Right. I'd say 2 to 3 weeks, no problem. 2 to 3 months, that's a problem. Sure. So somewhere in, if it's gonna be in between there,
That's what I was wondering, if
Yeah.
it'd be at the next meeting
how often do you guys meet, every month?
every month. If
That's
there's a-
probably
If there's a
okay.
case,
If there's a case.
But if we
Right.
had to reconvene for a particular case, then we do it at the, and what we've done historically, and the few that we've put over to it, to the following meeting, is we tell them, we meet next on, February, whatever,
Yeah,
we'll take the application up at that time and make
Okay.
a decision.
so it's really more continuing the hearing than saying,
Correct.
we're all done with you, we're gonna make our
Right,
decision
we're
and
gonna
we'll
go
mail it to
back
you.
and make a decision.
Yeah.
No, we don't do
I
that.
don't think they've ever had one where they postponed the decision-making process.
No.
It was always
Right.
wanting some additional information from the
More
applicant.
information.
That's
something
common.
From the applicant generally.
Yeah, okay, so you don't really have to worry about that. Written decision, written findings of fact. I know that you guys get the script, which is awesome. You guys have a good crew here that,
Can you
Gives you that.
elaborate on finding of facts, though? Like,
yeah,
what should they be looking for finding of facts?
I'm gonna go to that a little bit.
Okay,
I'll get to that, yeah.
okay.
Obviously, at least 3 members have to concur. So you can reconsider your decisions. I don't know if anyone's ever asked you to do that, but you do have authority. There's case law that says that you may set aside or reconsider your decision anytime before an appeal is taken or the time to appeal expires. So
So within
20
that
days.
20-day
Mhm.
period, we could reconsider.
you
a
could,
decision.
yeah. And sometimes if they have an attorney, the attorney might say, think of a great argument the next day and write a motion for you to reconsider. I've seen that. And you do have the authority to get back together and reconsider. So that's what the case says. I think it's Supreme Court.
Does that reconsidering constitute another meeting, or is that in writing
Yes.
back to the?
Yeah, it would have to be in public session, in another meeting. Yeah. Okay, so appeals of your decisions, like the chair and I were talking about, the one a few years ago, they are to the Court of Common Pleas, so it goes to Delaware County. And then it can be appealed from there. So the one we had was appealed to Delaware County Court of Common Pleas, and they quit after that. So we prevailed, and then they didn't appeal. But you can theoretically go all the way to the Supreme Court with some of these. But the BZA cannot appeal. So if we had lost that case in the Court of Common Pleas, then we would have been, that's it for us. So only the applicant or the aggrieved person can appeal. All right, so variances, again, you guys know, that's your bread and butter. The individual property, so this is, you were talking earlier in the hearing about the precedent it might set, and Ohio law is pretty clear that every property is unique, and you kind of talked about that. So the precedent setting, especially for the BZA and a variance, because it is so particular, and you look at all the Duncan factors to that specific property, that the precedential value is pretty low it would have to be almost the exact same property characteristics right next door or something.
Every property is unique as well, so it
That's
really
right.
would be virtually impossible for that
That's
to
right.
happen.
Yeah. So that's pretty low. That's not really something you have to worry about. So variances are for particular problems, a minor departure from the strict rule or enforcement of the zoning provisions, the zoning resolution. I'll go through this real quick. You guys know all this. Have you ever had a use variance request?
Conditional use?
No, like a use variance.
Yes,
Have you?
yes.
So there's-
Reminds me, I can't remember.
It was Chandler Court,
Oh, right.
and the lady, she wanted to do a,
Oh, yeah, they just did it anyway. They went over to zoning and they did it anyway.
and that's
They-
what we were.
They went to the other path.
We were kept trying
Yeah.
to say,
Yeah.
you need to rezone the property, and she didn't want to go through rezoning the property, so
Well,
she
that's
came
what
and asked for the use variance, and,
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I think Chris
yeah.
came for that one.
yeah. So yeah, there's the area.
I mean, she got the daycare center open and,
It's
yeah,
there.
yeah, she got it.
Yeah, I mean, most of,
I hope to be parked right next to it shortly, but.
I take it that's where you live.
No, I'm in the restaurant.
Okay.
Okay.
So they are disfavored in the law, but they are also, you can't prohibit them outright,
Right.
right? But most people go to the zoning commission because that's your way better path.
That's really their realistic course. of
It
action
is,
to
it
do
is.
zoning.
Because a use variance runs up against your legislating instead of a quasi judicial proceeding. So, yeah, they're not too common and
No, I think that's the only one I can
Yeah.
remember we've ever had.
No, didn't we have the one, there was a gym across the street? No. Wasn't that a use one?
That was a,
That was a decals or something.
yeah, that was for signage, I think.
Yes.
Variance for signage.
They wanted to put those decals all over the windows.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, that's right, yeah.
yeah, it would have to be.
Long time ago. Boy, you got a good memory.
So, and it's a different standard too. For the area variance under Duncan, it's practical difficulties, but for a use variance, it's unnecessary hardship, which is a whole nother level of
Right.
burden that they have to prove.
And we've always thought they have to prove that there is no other use of that property, pretty much. That's the bottom line,
That's pretty
right?
much it, yeah.
Which we didn't see that there was. And that was as I recall, that's really what it turned on. Was that
It's
you
really,
could have
really
done a
hard.
dozen other things with that property besides that.
Right, yeah. It'd have to be like someone who's zoned industrial and they only have like a parcel as big as this room.
Right.
And there's no industrial use you could ever use with a parcel this small and, something really unusual.
We've had a couple of those with houses, adding decks and stuff, those are where the.
Yeah, easement variances, yeah, setback variances.
That's still area variance, that's not
Yeah.
use.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's.
So a variance is permanent unless you guys set it as some type of time expiring, which I can't even think of one that would be appropriate for. When is it appropriate? So these are just some of the instances. You guys know all that. Hey, my one picture.
I think those have been in here. to
That's, I think, that was the zoning commission, not the
Yeah,
BZA.
that was a zoning meeting, wasn't it?
This is just a stock photo. This was not anything in, yeah, but, so you guys know it's a public hearing, it's quasi judicial, the applicant has due process rights. So we already talked about unnecessary hardship for a use, practical difficulties for an area variance, the impact on the neighborhood, the Duncan test, which is right here, you guys already know that. So just a couple of things that maybe you've not thought about, those standards. They're not exclusive. So if there was something else that is not addressed by Duncan, you're not prohibited from considering it. I think it would have to be reasonable and not arbitrary. You couldn't say, well, I think that would make my school taxes higher. That would make no sense. It couldn't just be random. It would have to be related. But Duncan is not exclusive. That's what the Duncan case does say. Here's factors you should consider, but they aren't the end-all be-all. So there's 7 factors, right? There's no magic number tipping the scale. You could have 6 that go against, but 1 that goes for, and if it's really compelling, it can win the day. I would think that would be hard to do, but it could. So you guys have to just consider the whole ball of wax when you make your decision. There's no way to tell you, oh, it's 4-3 or it's 6 to.
Sure. Right.
Yeah, 6 to, it doesn't matter.
Really more subjective
Yeah,
than-
it is subjective and the standard is reasonable.
Right.
And so, that's why the trustees
This-
appointed you
yeah,
because you
yeah.
guys are reasonable people.
Most applications fail a couple of those criteria.
I'm sure they,
Two or
yeah.
three of them.
I'm sure, no doubt. So just to think about while you're doing the Duncan test, this goes to the area variance. It's not a substitute for rezoning. Conditional uses, so some townships confuse this. They think that they can impose they can let any conditional use they want happen. They don't realize it has to be one of the enumerated conditional uses in the zoning resolution. Because I've been asked to come to a hearing, and I'm like, well, why are you, this conditional use isn't even contemplated in your zoning resolution. Like, well, that's why they're asking us, because we can condition it. No, it has to already be in the zoning resolution. So there's some confusion there, but I don't think with you guys. You guys get to put conditions. So this comes from your zoning resolution. The conditional use can be abandoned if it's not commenced within 1 year, or if it's discontinued for 6 months or more, it's gone. It can be made void by a sale, so you can make that a condition. It usually is. And it can be revoked, like we talked about at the beginning.
Normally in a conditional use, we make it, that's a standard thing, it's revoked as soon as the property is sold.
Yeah, good, yeah.
Transferred.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you couldn't do that with conditional use for living space in an accessory building because you're not gonna make them tear out the
That would
living
be an
space, so-
unreasonable condition, yeah.
But it was approved because our zoning code allows it as a conditional use, so they got a conditional use, so then that would go with the land, right?
It would have to. It would almost be,
'Cause
would it be a
you couldn't-
non-conforming use at that point?
I mean, you couldn't make the new homeowners
No.
come back and get a,
No,
Every
no.
time.
That one would have to, it'd be unreasonable to have it expire by time or sale. Yeah, I think that would probably, it would have to be a reasonable condition at all. Any condition would have to be reasonable. Okay, those require notice, those hearings, you can conduct it in public. There are 8 general standards for conditional use. Yeah, I don't know if you've ever seen these.
They're not the Dunkin', no.
No,
we go
it's
through them.
it's a little different.
Yeah, we do.
It takes a lot longer. I hate them.
We haven't done it all, but
Yeah. Is it authorized within the zoning district, harmonious with the general objectives of the comprehensive plan, harmonious with the appearance of the neighborhood, served by the central public facilities? Yeah, you guys know these? Okay. All right. Is it detrimental because of some nuisance it would cause? Injury to the value of the neighboring properties, damage to, yeah, okay. And then these are just some of the issues, you can put conditions. You can put conditions to address all of these, depending on the proposed use, right? So I'm guessing you wouldn't have to put a smoke, fumes, or odors condition on a daycare, but, well, maybe. If they're infants, odors,
Cesspools.
diapers. and-
yeah, really.
Okay, so here's a little bit more of the nitty gritty, and I'm almost done. So this is where kind of the more nuanced stuff. Before a hearing, you shouldn't have discussion with other board members. That's an obvious, right? You don't want to commit any open meetings violations. There should be no independent fact finding, like, well, let me see, I got my packet ahead of time. I want to go walk the property and figure this all out. You should refrain from doing that as much as possible. Obviously, you live here, so you have knowledge of your township.
Like, we had an application on a house that I drive by.
Right.
Come out of my subdivision, and it's right there, I drove
Right.
by it, walked by it 3 times a day.
Or tonight, I heard some comments, oh, it's very wooded back there, and that's all just, that's
Right,
common
and it
knowledge that
just
you
happened
just,
today. I drove by the
Yeah.
property, that's the only
Yeah.
reason
yeah.
yeah.
That's different than coming in and putting on the record, well, I made sure to walk the entire length of the lot, and that I think the courts would not look favorably on.
like I've had applicants ask if they can contact board members before and always tell them no.
Yeah,
But, the board needs to be aware too, that if anybody ever does ask to speak to you, you have to tell them no. You
yeah,
can't do
especially
that.
a BZA, because you guys are quasi-judicial. So think of it like you're the judge. Would a judge ever talk to a defendant, before the trial? It would never happen. It's a little different for the trustees because they're taking legislative action and they're the elected representatives, so they're a little different. They can have some discussions, but yeah, so wouldn't talk to the neighbors, like, hey, Bill's coming tomorrow with an application. How do you feel about it? You wouldn't want to do that. Let Bill come and get on the podium and say it himself. Again, you're quasi judicial, you take evidence and, so when you do have someone come up to the podium and maybe they have standing, maybe they don't, I would allow the applicant to ask them questions, which you probably do.
We do.
Yeah. So that's like cross-examination, yeah.
We do, and it goes both
They banter.
ways typically.
Yeah, that's
And
great.
I found, we used to, I think early on when I came on the board, they didn't really allow that. One of the prior chairmen, he didn't allow that at all. But then I found that once you let that happen, but you establish the ground rules, it kind of makes everybody a little more comfortable with the process. Because, one of the things I take into consideration with these people, we had professionals tonight that have done this 1,000 times.
Yeah,
But you get a homeowner that wants to put a patio cover over his patio.
yeah,
He's never seen the inside of this place. And
Right.
I try and make sure that they understand what the process is.
Yeah.
Not informal, but informal enough to where
right,
it's not like going to court.
right.
You're very good at explaining that, Mark.
That's great.
And Mark does do an awesome job about,
He does. He does a great
that,
job.
as long as and like, I would be more cautious, like with the homeowner too, like, that they don't get question and question, and they're not getting like cross-examined
Right.
about something.
Right.
But I think you're pretty good about, saying, hey, that's not the direction
That's right,
this
you're
is
very
Yeah,
supposed
at
to
some
go or
point you
something.
gotta,
Cut it off.
Yeah. You need to cut it off.
So here's another interesting fact. You may deliberate, almost like you can recess. So if you guys wanted to ask me a question in the middle of that here, or at the end of that, before you made your decision, we could go out. You could go out, even just the 5 of you, if you want to talk outside of the presence of the applicant and the public. It's not executive session, that's a whole nother thing.
we
You-
never have.
Yeah,
Right, like Mark and I couldn't go off and discuss, just the two of us.
well, I would take the whole board.
Right,
Yeah,
that's what I was
yeah,
saying.
yeah.
We never have. I've never seen the necessity.
We haven't done it, but it's nice to know you
I
can
mean,
if you need to.
I guess.
Next time he's gonna take us to Gianmarco's and
We've,
discuss.
we've never had anything that, with those kinds of revelations where we.
Yeah,
But it can only be the board members or
and
the
council.
council.
Mhm.
Like, staff is not allowed to
No,
go
no, no,
with it.
no.
No one
No
else
more
is
new
allowed.
evidence in there, yeah, no,
Right,
no,
okay.
no one testifying in recess or whatever you want to call it, in deliberations. So, but you do have that ability. It's really, I agree with the approach of deliberating in public, because then you're making a more full record, and it's really just if you have to ask your attorney a question and you want to keep it attorney-client, that's what it's useful for.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. Okay, so the rules of evidence are relaxed, hearsay, obviously you're not telling people, hey, be quiet. You like the guy who came in and said, that's my friend's house. And he told me, it's total hearsay, but it doesn't,
Right.
you're not gonna shut it down. You should allow it and then give it the weight.
Well, and give it the consideration that it merits.
That's right, that's right. The burden of the proof is on the applicant to prove that the variance is required. It's not your burden. So I know that you guys want to be helpful and these are your fellow citizens and that you're public servants, but sometimes if they're just not carrying their burden, it's not your job to build their case for them.
Right.
So
Now,
I've seen that
I
happen.
will tell you that I don't do that, but I will, and I think the board joins in, will ask them questions.
Oh,
To
absolutely.
try and get them
Yeah.
where they're trying to go.
That's okay, especially like you said, the inexperienced
Right.
homeowner who's never set foot in
And I
here.
get that. I
Yeah.
remember the first time I walked in here too, back in,
Mhm.
1915.
Wait, the old one that got moved to McNamara? Okay. All witnesses have to be sworn in. You guys know that. Mark the exhibits. You guys are really good about that. Conflicts of interest. So the Ohio Ethics Commission has talked about per se conflicts of interest. If your property touches the property of an applicant, per se, you have a conflict of interest. If it's adjacent, like across the street, conflict of interest. Once you go out from there, it gets a little bit more nebulous. If you're not sure, you could always call our office and we can give you what we think, if it is or it isn't. But if a lot of times it's just a feeling like, well, that's my best friend. Obviously, that's a no-brainer. Or that's my daughter's best friend's parent. It's sometimes if it feels like you should abstain, then just abstain.
It's better to err on the side of being cautious.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so the written findings of fact and making the motion at the end. Okay, so the findings of fact, you take in the evidence, the testimony, you've had your discussions, you've asked the questions. You should follow your script because it's excellent. And then it should go motion, discussion, vote. So the motion, so tonight, Teresa started the motion, but then Mark, you started to also make the motion. Like, the better approach before you formally say, I move to, and maybe the script throws you off because you're following it. Say, okay, if I were to move one way or the other, what would we find? Like, fill in the blanks first. And then once you are comfortable and you have it set, say, okay, I move to, and then you make the motion. Because otherwise it can be kind of unclear. They both added to that motion.
Yeah, that's a carryover from early on this board, because when we've had conditions, it all of a sudden became a group project, and I think, and I agree 100% with you on that, is
Yeah.
that the motion is what the motion is. and
Yeah.
It should be, and
Right.
it's crafted.
Yeah, it should
and
be real.
she's perfectly capable of doing it on her own without my help.
But
Well,
it's-
no,
It's
but-
good. I mean, I think you should do a group motion. Everybody talks about it, goes through,
Right.
goes through these items.
It should have probably been
Somebody's
discussion.
sitting there and they scribe and they write down the items. And then, like Mark said,
Yeah, and
then
then you're
they
ready for the
go and
motion.
say, okay, I move.
Yeah,
And nobody says anything the whole time that person's making their motion. Then, at the end, you get to have discussion. And if you want to make a change to the motion, you can do that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
right,
That makes sense.
right, yeah.
Well,
So after
yeah,
the
we
second,
gotta be
then you
more
can.
aware of that. Although we don't make a lot of conditions in our defense, we do that
Yeah.
very rarely.
But it's not the conditions part, it's the actual motion. Like,
Right, I
in,
understand.
we have,
She said-
and you guys came up with really good reasons this evening, but it was a group. So then once the group gets all of those items down, then just one person needs, because it's really hard when you're making one, if we have to defend that motion, Mark has to defend us in court, or just to write the motion as, when you're writing the
Oh, yeah,
minutes.
to take the minutes.
It's really difficult when, one person starts and then somebody else interjects and then, oh yeah, this, and it's really, really difficult from our end, when Paul's, or whoever's doing motion, or the minutes.
Yeah, so you could say, just to get everyone on the same page of what you're ready to do, let's talk about what a motion might say. And then you can kind of fill in, get your thoughts together, and then say, okay, I think I'm ready, I move. And then if Teresa forgot anything, you can always, you go to, the second, and then discussion, Paul could say, oh,
Right.
I move to amend the motion because we forgot to say X, Y,
Exactly.
and Z. Okay,
Yeah,
so it's
makes
just,
sense.
being a lawyer.
It's clear in that
Yeah.
block who did it.
Right, because that's the real, that's your action, that's your decision. So some courts might get lazy and only look at that, so we want that real tight. Okay, and then do you guys mail the decision to the applicant?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, because like you said, you
After
always make
the-
the decision that night, but they should still mail.
Because they don't approve minutes till, so after the minutes are approved, then we mail. them.
Okay, yeah, that's, yeah. Although, well, yeah, I do wonder if that gives them another appeal window. Well,
I mean, typically, it's not an issue, but, so.
I
do
don't
you
know,
think
I'd
we
have to
could-
think about that.
Well, let us know, because, I
Okay.
mean, we can mail it out right away. I mean, typically, we don't hold up somebody pulling a permit, because if it was approved and no one objected at the,
Yeah,
you know, we go ahead and issue the permit.
right. So in the same vein, it would be
Okay.
not that big of a deal to mail.
Okay.
Okay, that's all I have. Do you guys have any questions of me?
No, thank you. It's very enlightening. Thank you for coming down. Make sure you
No
come
problem.
back
It's
next
great to
year,
see you guys.
if not before.
Yeah,
I actually do have a random question.
Sure.
So in reading through this packet, in conflicts of interest and ethical considerations,
Yeah.
under primary prohibitions, it says trustees' attendance at BZA hearings and vice versa. Does that mean trustees can't attend our meetings and we can't attend their meetings?
so I worry about that more in the Board of, the Zoning Commission. Because they then have to hear the same application. For you guys, that's less of a, I didn't write that, that's Pete Griggs's, although I think Pete's great. So is he talking about even the BZA? That is a BZA specific. Yeah.
Our stuff almost never goes to a trustee meeting, so.
I don't even know what they have
I used to
no,
go to trustee meetings regularly when
I mean,
was
I don't,
early on
you
this
wouldn't
board.
want a trustee, to come to a BZA meeting and necessarily try to tell them how to make their decision,
no.
but
Huh?
I don't, why would a BZA member not allowed to attend
Yeah, I
a
know.
trustee
That's
meeting?
true. Yeah, we
Right,
did.
so what we
But it was
usually tell
never
people
anything that was
is, you know,
going to
you're still
them, though,
township
either.
residents, and the trustees might be doing something that you're interested in. And so you don't lose your rights as a township citizen to attend, and I guess if for somehow there was something that might come before the BZA, or they're gonna address a property that you guys have before you the next day, or something weird like that, you're gonna wanna steer clear of any of that, but just day to day, you can absolutely attend trustee meetings and be a township normal township
Give
resident.
up
adjourned
some
yet, by
rights,
the way,
though,
so.
because if your neighbors has a variance request or something, you really aren't
Yeah,
going to
Sure.
say anything against with that. So you do
You
give up a
shouldn't.
little bit of your, you're not a standard citizen township resident anymore.
we've created a little bit of a conflict of interest possibility.
Right.
You know, you're on the BZA, but yet your neighbor wants a variance that you disagree with. That's, you know, you've got to, obviously you wouldn't hear it because you are right next door, but would you even, probably shouldn't even show up and speak against it because you're on this board. So yeah, that's what Susan means, but yeah.
Send someone else to do it.
Right.
I
yeah,
mean,
you
You can send
really,
a spouse. Yeah,
Send
someone
the
else
other
in your
neighbor.
household. Right, you can send another neighbor.
Send the
someone-
other neighbor.
Someone else in the household.
residents who have interests that you
Sure.
want to protect, so,
Yeah,
Right.
I could definitely have thoughts if my neighbor did something wonky.
Yeah.
and Came
Yeah.
here.
I'll give that
Yeah.
back to you.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I get it. All right.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you, Mark, very much. Make sure you come back next year. Don't be a stranger.
Yeah, I will.
Okay, then at this point, it is 8:45. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Any, okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.